Welcome to Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Arey, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in the second trailer for Venom, Let There Be Carnage. The trailer begins with Eddie on his red crotch rocket bike. Now, I might be overthinking this, but red is a color that seems to symbolize the villain Carnage. Now, in this movie, Carnage is the driving force behind the plot, the same way Eddie is carried around on his red bike. I mean, they could have picked a different color for the bike, so I think red was a direct symbolic choice. We get a little more of the fun push and pull between Eddie wanting to be a normal guy and the symbiote wanting to eat people.
We should be out there snacking on bad guys.
Though it's played for laughs, there is a danger here that the symbiote could break with Eddie, so it could eat all the people that it wants. I have a theory about that I'll go into later in the video. We see the symbiote munching on a tire swing like it's a chew toy that Eddie's just put there to placate it. But I don't think this is actually a tire. To me, it looks like it came off the side of a boat named Snooki, perhaps after the breakout star of the Jersey Shore. By the way, I actually own a copy of her novel, A Shore Thing. 10 out of 10, it's a must-read. To your kids as punishment, notice Eddie's apartment is still filled with random food. There's candy bars everywhere as he's trying to keep the symbiote's hunger at bay. He drives up to the Ravencroft Institute, which in the comics is like Spider-Man's answer to Arkham Asylum. In the comics, the lead psychiatrist is named Dr. Kafka, and she's a kind woman with a gift for reforming villains. Now, you remember this character was kind of reimagined as a villain in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Kind of a bummer since the original was based on your mom. He tells the symbiote,
"We will get hauled off into Area 51.
Which is interesting that Area 51 could actually be a real place in this universe, and that Eddie, a reporter, knows about it. But I guess it is public knowledge that a spaceship came back to Earth with alien life forms, so it makes sense if the government had a public-facing facility to store alien technology. And then we see Shriek in Ravencroft. Shriek in the comics has sonic powers, but can also amplify negative emotions in others. There was a massive comics crossover called Maximum Carnage that I think this movie is going to borrow from. Even if you didn't read the comics, you might have heard of the video game or seen it advertised on posters in your schools, if you're a 90s kid. In the comics, she and Carnage become an item, they recruit other psychopathic supervillains, and then go on a murder spree throughout the city, which inspires ordinary people to also riot and murder, all thanks to Shriek's powers. We can see here that she's in a soundproof box and that she's reading about Cletus Cassidy, the serial killer who becomes Carnage. So it's interesting that she already has an affinity for him before we see them meet later in the trailer. She's not only being kept in a soundproof box, but inside a steel cell like a bank vault, which we see being shut here.
What's that smell? Is that you?
Oh, hey Doug. Our manager Doug, everyone. Is what me?
Something in here smells great. I would know, because I am a dog and I smell very well.
Well, since you asked, I am wearing cologne.
No way. How do you know what cologne to buy?
Actually, I don't. That's why I subscribe to Scentbird, the sponsor of this video. This is actually a great service for a guy like me because I have no idea what makes for a good cologne. And cologne is expensive, so I didn't want to drop a lot of money on an expensive bottle. So with Scentbird, you can take a fragrance recommendation quiz to help find the right fragrance for you. This one is called Hypnotizing Fire.
Look out, person. Fire is bad.
Not that kind of fire, buddy. So this one's my favorite. It's called Opulent Wood, and you can see that it's much larger than a normal sample size that you get in a store. In fact, it's 8 times the size of a regular sample. It's really nice. It's got a hint of cedar and sandalwood. Scentbird is a fragrance subscription service that lets you skip any month without penalties. If you're new to wearing cologne, this is a great way to start. You can choose one of more than 600 brands every month for just $16. You get a 30-day supply, which helps you figure out if you like a scent before you commit to buying an entire bottle. You can also upgrade to receive 2 or 3 samples a month. So if you want to give Scentbird a try, use our coupon code in the description to get your first month for just $11.
Person, I'm glad you got Scentbird because you used to smell really bad.
Okay, buddy.
Like really, really bad. Now you smell good, like crystal blue waters under the warmth of the sun.
Well, you might be smelling this fragrance, Artisan Bleu. All thanks to Scentbird. So if you'd like to try some fragrances, click the link in the description and enter our coupon code to get started with Scentbird today. Back to the Easter eggs. Eddie has written the rule about not eating people in a pizza box, another subtle way of reminding us that food is always on the symbiote's mind, and Eddie is like Seymour Krelborn, always trying to keep the monster in his home fed.
What do you want from me, what?
Venom point blank calls Eddie
A loser.
which is saying something, because remember, he wasn't too popular on his home planet.
On my planet, I am kind of a loser, like you.
Just quick shout out to that scene in Venom. That's the moment when I was like, this movie's okay, to like, I am loving this movie. From this scene on, the movie's pretty great. The song in the trailer is One is the Loneliest Number, just like in the first trailer, except that version was a little more lighthearted because it was referring to Eddie being trapped with Venom. Even though they were one, he still felt alone. But in this trailer, the song is darker. implying that it's not just Venom that Eddie is stuck with, it's Carnage. Now that he's no longer alone, things are even worse than they were before. The trailer cuts back and forth from Ravencroft to Blackgate Prison. In the comics, Eddie and Cletus were cellmates here. When Eddie's symbiote broke him out, it reproduced and then its spawn joined with Cletus to become Carnage. He says,
"What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine."
Now, he actually says this after the bite that we see next, because you can tell they're in different locations. So I think that Cletus could smell that there was something different about Eddie. They met a few times since Eddie was reporting on Cletus's cases. And as we see later in the trailer, it looks like that Cletus refused to talk to any other reporter, but he agreed to tell Eddie where some of his victims were buried. So he becomes obsessed with Eddie, and he wants to know why he seems so different. So he bites him. Then he can immediately tell that something is off.
I have tasted blood before, and that is not it.
When Eddie is working, we see these drawings that were made by Cletus, and we see this church and tree, which we also saw carved into a cell wall in trailer 1. The tree has a love heart, and he's written, "To thee the strife was given between the suffering." And now this is actually a quote from the poem Prometheus by Lord Byron. Prometheus was the Greek god who decided to give fire to mankind. This, of course, angered the other gods, and Prometheus was punished. But this idea of a greater force coming from the heavens to empower mankind speaks to the ship that we saw in the first movie. And the symbolism here is with the alien life forms that humans brought back from space. The alien symbiotes come down to Earth, and now they've granted their power to Cletus Cassidy, Carnage. But this wouldn't be why he originally scrawled this on his tree drawing. I think that his original intention was to say that to make someone suffer is a twisted form of love, and this is the kind of sadomasochistic relationship that he forms with Shriek in the comics. In fact, Cletus might have even killed someone in her family, so in this movie she would hate him, but she would also love him since she's insane. So Eddie is a reporter for the Daily Bugle West Coast edition, since this newspaper is based in New York. But notice that the masthead is exactly the same as it looks in the Sam Raimi films, but we've already seen a Venom in that universe. So this means that the Venomverse and the Raimiverse are variants of each other, existing in the same Marvel multiverse that we just saw explode in Loki. At least, I think Sony is going to heavily imply that its movies are part of the same multiverse so Tom Holland can cross over and fight Tom Hardy. Let me know if you think that's a good idea down in the comments below. After Cletus yells at Eddie,
I have tasted blood before, and that is not it.
we cut straight to Eddie flipping down his visor, showing that he does have something to hide from the world. Then we see Cletus being put to death by lethal injection, but just as the light fades from his eyes, Red takes over and the Carnage symbiote resurrects him. In the comics, the symbiote actually joins with his blood and they become one, not separate entities like Eddie and Venom. In fact, later in the prison breakout, we can see that he's able to open a hole inside of himself. Another way of saying that his cells have entirely fused with the symbiotes, and now he's more like a T-1000 walking pile of murder goo. We also see him freeing the prisoners, which also happens in Maximum Carnage. It makes sense that if he's going to terrorize the entire city, he would free all of these inmates, and Shriek would augment their worst impulses to make them all go out and do some evil. And we see the two of them escaping together, and her using her powers to tear the car apart as they speed away. Now, a great deal of the trailer takes place in a church that's being renovated. I'm wondering if this could be the orphanage where Cletus grew up. The Maximum Carnage comics that I mentioned earlier ended with Cletus returning to the orphanage where he was abused. This could also be the church that we see in his drawings. The stained glass window also seems inspired by Maximum Carnage. There's a church with a large window like this in the books, but it was mostly prominent in the video game adaptation. And by the way, the image of Carnage posing in front of the window is taken from Da Vinci's model of man. Symbolically, this is saying that Carnage is the next step up on the evolutionary ladder, because Prometheus, the aliens, have given him the tools to evolve. Later, we see Cletus in Eddie's bodega. Now, I think that Cletus can sense Eddie. He can taste his blood. After all, he says,
Eddie, you feel like home to me, like family.
He's still obsessed with Eddie. Maybe he wants more of his blood so he can make more symbiotes like himself. And I love all the banter between Eddie and the symbiote when they see Carnage for the first time.
That is a red one!
You need to come out right now.
Then he has to convince him to come out like Banner and Hulk in Infinity War.
Come on! What do you mean, no?
And then we get a quick update on Eddie and Anne's relationship. It's not going well. In fact, she's going out with Dan from Veep.
No!
So what I'm wondering here, since the movie is about Carnage and Shriek amplifying people's worst impulses, I'm thinking they will amplify the symbiote's worst impulses. Then the symbiote could even turn on Eddie and accept Cletus's offer to eat whoever he wants.
I need to be free.
So the movie could end with Eddie, a human, trying to bring down both symbiotes. Maybe he'll appeal to Shriek, whose sonic powers are one of the symbiote's 2 weaknesses in the comics. Well, that's just everything I noticed. Let me know if you found anything else in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Arey.